Mermaids aren't what you think they are. By Burger 22. Hey everyone. I am currently sitting in my room recalculating all the events that have happened. I can't believe I had to go through something like this. Let me give you some background before I begin my story. My name is Jake, currently 21, junior year of college. I live in Southern California and still do to this day. I am now living with my uncle in his huge, rich house, but I first lived on a beach house where this story begins. It was June 2015, I was 16 at the time enjoying my life living at my beach house with my parents. The first event of the story happened on a Friday night when my parents were out on a date. I was in my room playing video games like any other teen boy when I heard a strange noise. It sounded like someone was singing. A woman's voice to be specific. It was beautiful and alluring, but also quite terrifying. You have to hear it to understand. At first I thought someone was hosting a party or something, but the music was not like anything that would be sung at any party. Plus what made it more strange, was it sounded clear as day, as if I was right next to who or what was producing the sound. I don't know how else to describe it. From what I processed from my brain, it seemed the singing was coming from my boat dock. I forgot to mention that I have a boat dock behind my backyard. Dock there are my parents' 2 jet skis and our houseboat, only used for special occasions. The dock is only lit by one warm white overhead light, so when I took a peek out my window, I couldn't see anything. So I just ignored it and eventually the singing stopped. Little did I know this would be one of the many encounters I would have. Anyways, my parents soon returned home about half an hour later. I didn't mention what happened to them as it wasn't really that concerning. Once school rolled around, I went up to my friend who I will call Ben for this story. I told him about the singing I heard and he seemed interested in my story. "I think I know what you encountered," he said with an inspired tone. "Honestly, I don't know what to tell you," he added. The school day went by as normal and I returned home with no issues. I was still questioned about what that singing I heard could be and I tried to listen to the singing when night arrived and recorded on my phone, but nothing came up. So I just went to bed as I had nothing else to do. Next day at school was nothing special. At lunch, Ben and I met at a table to discuss more about the mystery of that singing I heard. At one point during our conversation, he told me what I possibly encountered the other night. "Alright, I know this may sound crazy, but I think what you heard was a mermaid or siren." I was quite shocked by his bizarre possible answer. "How, they don't exist?" I questioned. "I mean, I know mermaids are mythical creatures and sirens are mermaid-like creatures. Yes, I know they originated as bird-like women, but it changed for some reason. Also I know there are the people who will say mermaids and sirens aren't the same, and you're correct, but they're practically the same thing. I just didn't think of a siren/mermaid when I heard the singing, I thought it was someone hosting a karaoke night. Although, it just seemed too unnatural for a human to sing in a quality like that." Nevertheless, he did have a point as there have been many reports of people going missing near the Pacific Ocean. The school day is coming to an end so we packed up all our school supplies and headed out. We both went our separate ways back to our houses, which we both lived in the same rich neighborhood but he didn't have a beach house like me. Now I know I have to be careful if I were to encounter one of these supposed mermaids. It would be cool for me to discover them, but maybe not now. I should keep my distance. Anyways, fast forward to December and the melodic singing continued. I tried to find what is producing that wonderful noise, but no luck. Then I thought, if it could possibly be a mermaid and I just ignore them, they will go away. It kinda worked as the melodic singing appeared less and less. However, my thoughts on these wonderful tunes would change for the worst. One chilly, white night, I was walking down the sidewalk by the ocean when the familiar singing played in my ears. I wasn't scared but I stopped and scanned the sea level trying to seek out a humanoid figure bobbing above the water. After about 10 seconds of scanning the ocean, I saw the figure singing in a gesture as if she was calling out to someone. This caught me off guard. And to add to that, there was another figure in the water, a man. What the hell? All of a sudden the woman dives underwater in a quick motion. This shocked me and I could tell the man was shocked as well. Then in a split second he was dragged underwater. I could see the man's arm flailing around in the water. When he came back up I heard his agonizing screams. He was quickly brought underwater again. Eventually, his arm stopped flailing and splashed in the water. The woman then popped her head out of the water, grabbed the arm and put it up to her mouth. The dreadful realization hit me and I knew her feasting on this man was my distraction to get the hell out of there. I did a 180 and started booking it back to my house. I got back to my house, opened the back door, slammed it shut behind me and locked it. After locking the door, I began to calm down gathering my thoughts. "You okay, son?" My dad's voice echoing from the living room. Yeah, just got done with a jog. I replied. I went to my room and played some video games to get my mind off of it. I knew people would think I'm crazy if I told them that encounter. However, one more encounter happened that made me more aware of these creatures. One dark, chilly, eerie, and dark Friday night, my parents told me they were hosting a party at our house, unfortunately only for just their adult friends. At least I didn't get my hopes up too high. They informed me that I didn't have to leave the house and crash at one of my friend's house, which was nice as Ben was out of town visiting his extended family and I didn't know any of the girls that well and I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. The party was going to last until 2 a.m. I could set up our camping tent, but there aren't many locations in my neighborhood to set up the tent. Either I would be on someone else's property, or on mine, but would have to deal with blaring party music. This meant that my only other option was the houseboat by my dock. I didn't mind as I enjoyed being on it. Plus, my parents installed a router on the boat along with a TV. However, from what has happened, I was having second thoughts, but I'm sure I'll be alright. I can play Xbox with my online friends in peace and quiet due to the distance from the dock. So I grabbed my Xbox, some snacks, water, a pillow, and a blanket and headed back to the boat, informing my parents where I would be. Honestly, I have to say, playing video games on a boat isolated from my house was strangely amazing. At about 11:30 p.m., I thought it would be best to hit the hay, so I turned off the TV and made myself comfortable on the couch. All of a sudden, I just woke up, no reason why I did. I took a peek at the digital clock on the side table by the couch. The time read 2:30 a.m. The thing was, music from my house was still blasting and beating on my eardrums, but why? The party should have ended half an hour ago. Maybe my parents extended it or something. So to find my answer, I got up from the comfortable, soft couch and made my way to the front door of the houseboat. I took a peek through the window and said to myself, what the hell? My entire house was completely dark outside of the light by the pantry. That makes no sense as I could still hear music running through my ears. However, the music didn't sound like party music. I listened for a bit, and red flags started to pop up in my head as I heard the same melodic singing from the previous nights. What made this situation more concerning was the fact that I heard multiple voices coming from outside. Now to be fair, I wasn't on high alert, but I was starting to get fed up with this. All of a sudden the boat started to rock back and forth. The rocking was so intense, it felt like the boat was getting hit by a tsunami. However, there was no storm outside. It kept getting so intense the boat started to submerge underwater. I was pissing my pants at this point. I got on the ground and hid behind the couch, even though it probably wasn't the smartest idea. Eventually the rocking stopped a couple minutes later. The good news was nothing on the interior was damaged, although the boat looked like a dump. I couldn't tell if there was any exterior damage. I regained my composure when I heard giggling coming outside the boat. Anger took over my emotions and knew someone was messing with me. It couldn't be a human who caused the rocking, as a human can't cause that intense of a rocking. Unfortunately, I didn't have a weapon to show threat, so I decided to go outside and confront whoever was outside making that giggling. I shoved the front door of the boat open and walked out onto the lower deck. I couldn't see anything and the giggling had all of a sudden ceased. Okay, that's it. I thought to myself. There was no way I could turn on the deck light from the outside, which then again I should have had second thoughts on staying inside and just looking out the front deck window. So the only thing I could think of doing was to grab my phone, bring up the camera, turn on the flash and take a picture, to only give my position away for a split second, not to take an actual picture. The front lower deck and a part of the ocean was lit up by the flash of my phone as the phone captured the image. After the picture was taken, what I saw for the briefest second was a bunch of human-sized fish tails in many colors and shapes in a scaly-like pattern. I froze in fear as I heard haunting giggling simultaneously, confirming there were multiple of these creatures. I quickly ran back into the houseboat, locked the door, and covered myself under my blankets like a kid trying to hide from the monster in their closet. The color was draining from my body, like if I was an ice cube melting. I stayed there stiff as a board until I fell asleep. I woke up to the orange, dawn sunlight shining into the living room of the boat. The time was 8:15 a.m. from looking at the digital clock. I couldn't believe I had fallen asleep from the incident that happened last night. I was still a bit paranoid about what happened, so I decided to search the boat to see if anything was wrong. After about 5 minutes of looking around, as this wasn't that large of a houseboat, I found nothing out of the ordinary. I was starting to get pretty ravenous, so I left the boat and made my way back to my house. I opened the back door and was greeted by my parents sitting at our kitchen island sipping some coffee and my dad reading the newspaper. My mom heard me sliding the back door open, and turned her head to look at me. "Good morning, Jake," she greeted in a cheerful voice. "You too, Mom." I replied back. How was the party? I asked. Oh, it was great, all of us had the time of our lives. We were a bit worried about you though. She answered, while proceeding to serve me a French toast and some OJ. I sat down at the island and began to feast on my French toast and OJ. Once I was finished, I cleaned up my plate and headed upstairs to relax a bit as I was still recovering from what I witnessed last night. Nothing else happened the rest of the weekend, but the melodic singing continued to happen, more frequently to the point where it would happen every other night. From this point on, I just simply ignored all of the singing and avoided the ocean at all costs, hoping at one point, they would go away. That didn't happen of course, but I don't want to see one of those monsters again. They will get bored, I just have to be patient. Once school came around, I couldn't wait to disclose to Ben about everything. And that's exactly what I did when I found Ben at lunch and even showed him the image I captured. After I told all my recent encounters, he was visibly freaking out. Dude, we need to somehow stop all of this. All of this is starting to get completely ridiculous and insane. He said in a worried tone. No, I'm not speaking to any of those monsters. I replied. There is no way I'm going to get these things off my back and away from my life. I added. Look, you're just overreacting. Ben persuaded. You're right. I complied. I just need to forget about it and everything should go back to normal. But I prepared myself just in case. Plus I might be able to scare her or whatever it was. Even if it was a mermaid. One night, my parents weren't home at the time as they left to go on a weekend vacation together. I began to play some video games to pass the time. School crossed the horizon again, and had somewhat put the event that happened last weekend behind my back. What was strange was that I didn't see Ben throughout the entire school day. In fact, I didn't see him for the next few days. I tried contacting him multiple times, but he never responded. On Friday, he returned to school, but was different than he usually is. What I mean by that is when I saw him, he was sitting alone on a bench. I went over to comfort him. Hey Ben, I said while approaching him. He turned to look at me and had this look of trauma in his eyes. Then I noticed he had a massive bandage around his right leg. Oh, I see you had an injury. I commented. Yeah, but it wasn't my fault. He responded. What do you mean? I asked in a curious and concerned voice. Well, let's just say you were right. He answered. I still didn't understand but listened to his story. So I was chilling in my house watching some Netflix when I heard a noise coming from my backyard. It sounded like someone was singing, but not like any singing voice I've ever heard. It was starting to get annoying after 3 minutes, so I had to find out who was singing. The voice was clearly human, but didn't seem like a human has the ability to sing in a high quality. So I went outside and began searching my backyard. Once I took a glance at my pool, I saw a humanoid figure bobbing up and down in my pool. Now at first, I was pretty angered by this as someone was trespassing on my family's property. So I marched over to the figure and screamed, "Hey, what are you doing in my swimming pool?" The figure stopped singing and spun their head in my direction. As I got closer and closer to the pool, the figure was revealed to me more. I got to the pool deck and continued to scream at whoever this was to get off my property when all of a sudden, I saw the figure's lower body. A human-sized fish tail. I tensed up in terror as I tried to make a mad dash for the back door, but the mermaid caught on and snatched my leg and dragged me into the pool. I frantically flailed around in the water trying to escape when I felt a sharp pain in my leg. I screamed so loud that it caught some attention. I saw my next-door neighbor turn on his bedroom light and saw him peeking through his window. His figure quickly ran away from his window. Another sharp pain pierced through my skin. I felt weak, I felt like I was going to die. Then I heard a gunshot echo from across the yard. An ear-piercing scream filled my ears. However, the grasp was loose on my leg and I was able to escape the pool and crawled onto my patio. I laid down on my back as I saw a figure spiriting off into the darkness after hopping over my fence. My next-door neighbor quickly came over to me and called 911. I was rushed over to the hospital where I met my parents as they were hanging out with some of their friends. The sight of my parents made me feel so much better after what happened. When I saw my injury, I was horrified. It was some bite marks of what appeared to take the shape of sharp teeth. Not the size of a small fish, but not the size of a shark. I was bandaged and sat in the hospital for a couple days until I was released. Doctors said I was attacked by some large fish, but I believe it was a mermaid. I became terrified after hearing his story. How did she get to your pool? I thought they could only live in the ocean. I said in a confusing voice. Well, in some stories, they're able to travel on land by either shaving off their tails or shape-shift their tails into human legs and act like humans. Many red flags were going off in my head. I can only imagine the possibilities of these creatures attacking the humans. We got through the rest of the school day with ease, and I decided to leave him alone to recover from his incident. It was all over the news in our community, but officials don't know what caused the bite marks. Ben didn't say his theory because he was worried that people would think he's insane. Fast forward a few weeks and I was starting to forget about the incidents. Staying away from the ocean seemed to have worked. However, I could still hear the singing coming from outside. It was more terrifying whenever I went on nightly walks around my neighborhood. I would glance around my surroundings, making sure none of these creatures would sneak up behind me. Unfortunately, the incidents would start again, but thankfully this was the last one. So it all started with me walking down one of the blocks near my house. I was making my way back to the house when I was greeted by a group of figures standing on the sidewalk as if they were waiting for me after rounding an intersection. I stopped in my tracks, but not on high alert. The figures began moving towards me, which I can now recognize they were a group of women. I would say around in their 20s. They had sinister grins on their faces as if I was fresh steak. I was so confused about their weird behavior. They eventually came within personal space distance and then they all stood still, stiff as a bunch of boards. Is something wrong? I asked. All of a sudden 2 of the women lunged at me. They grabbed me as I fell back onto the concrete. I regained my composure and saw all the women staring at me. They smiled with their teeth showing, which were very sharp and resembled the shape of fish teeth. A dreadful force hit me as I realized what was in front of me. They began to pull me down the street and towards the ocean. I knew what they were doing and I will be a dead man when we reach the ocean. I don't know why they could have just finished me off right then and there, but I guess they didn't want to have any witnesses. However, I knew I could get out of this. I had to be strong. I glanced around to see if I could find something to use as a weapon. I noticed a stick laying down in the road. I scooped it up and slashed at one of the mermaids in an aggressive motion. Her screams filled my ears, but I had to ignore it as best as possible. However, the realization of me harming one of the mermaids triggered the others to attack me. One of them pinned my arm down and took a bite into it, sinking its sharp teeth deep into my skin and flesh. The pain was brutal, but I had to take it in order to escape. The good thing was she bit the arm that didn't occupy the stick in my hand. So I took advantage of that and stabbed the mermaid in her stomach. Her scream was worse than the one before. She let go of me and with the distraction from the others, I was able to conquer their supernatural strength, rose to my feet and bolted for my house. My left arm was dangling, but my life was all I cared about. I could hear footsteps from behind me, keeping pace at a terrifying speed. I rounded a T-junction and saw my house. I used the rest of my stamina to make it to the safety of my house. Once I arrived at my house, I turned around to see if I was being chased, but nothing was there. Then I heard the familiar singing off in the distance, but I knew better and quickly ran inside my house. At last, I felt safe. At this point, I was done with this whole supposed mermaid crap, so I finally dialed 911, which I should have done a long time ago. About 15 minutes later, 2 cop cars arrived at my house. It felt amazing hearing those blaring sirens traveling down the street, telling me I'm safe. I told everything to the cops, which felt like I was giving a high school graduation speech because of how much information I gave them. After I told the cops everything, they all gave me facial expressions as if they believed me. 2 of the cops then patrolled the neighborhood, while the other one stayed to ask me questions. 20 minutes later, the second cop comes back and just my luck, nothing turns up. Everyone I informed them about were gone. They also didn't find anything that seemed odd. The cops thanked me for my statement. They got into their cars and left. I watched the lights disappear into the darkness of midnight as they rounded a corner. Once the cops were gone, I went to the bathroom and wrapped myself in a bandage. It actually was that bad of an injury because of my quick reaction, but it was still a good one. I should have called my parents first, but I guess I didn't think of that at the time. Afterwards, I crashed right into my bed. I didn't care, I just wanted to get some sleep and forget about what happened. I had some trouble falling into a deep slumber as I was still recovering from this insane incident. I eventually fell asleep. The next Monday morning I woke up with the dawn sunlight consuming my room. The house was just silent outside of the typical AC unit. I guess my parents already had to go to work. My theory was soon confirmed when I saw a note on the counter. I made my breakfast, ate it, and hopped on the bus when it arrived at my block. I arrived at school and told Ben the whole incident, and he immediately felt sympathy for me. When I got home, my parents soon informed me that they were moving to a new house. It was near my uncle's mansion, but it didn't have enough room to support the 3 of us as it was the only house that was available. During this time period, I was slowly but surely moving in with my uncle in his rich upstate mansion. I wanted to move up there for a long time as the closeness to my parents was decreasing over the past few years. By the end of the school year, everything of mine was out of my beach house. The houseboat and jet skis are now stored in a private shed at a nearby public dock. Fast forward to today, it's been almost 5 years since the last incident, and I want that number to keep growing. Ben and I are still best friends to this day, and we both go to the same college. I have been able to go back to my normal life. I haven't mentioned a single thing about it to my parents nor my uncle, as they probably think I'm insane. And that's pretty much it. I'm sitting here at my desk posting this story to see if someone has had a similar experience, though the chances of that are slim to none. So even though this may never happen, if you come across a melodic singing voice, stand your ground and be careful. Because I'm telling you, mermaids aren't what you think they are. Disney has lied to you. Thanks for listening. The link to the Reddit post are in the description below. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.